Well, hello again, and welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Marion, and I'm the hands and the head behind the crochet name Wool Thread Paint. Today I'm here, of course, to introduce this beauty behind me. Every year around this time, I produce a blanket which is a Christmas one. It has a Christmas theme and it's published in September so that anybody who wants to make the blanket has time to do it before Christmas. It's a great feeling when the pattern is finished and it's off my hands. I can breathe a big sigh of relief because the pattern writing stage takes a few weeks, and in that time, all I can concentrate on is the pattern. So I'm sitting at my computer for hours and hours every day, and I don't allow myself to do anything else, any distractions like trying out some new crochet or anything like that. So I'm really keen to get the hook back in my hand again now. So this has been happening for the past 6 years. This is the sixth Christmas blanket I've produced. And of course, it's always a summer project for me, always at the hottest time of the year. And this girl here is a big blanket. So she's been on my lap while I've been crocheting for July, August. It's been quite a hot job because, believe it or not, in this little corner of the east coast of Scotland by the sea, we've had just about as hot a summer as anywhere else in Britain. And this attic studio does get hot and stuffy. It's built into the roof space of the cottage. And thankfully, we have big windows here that I can open, but yeah, it has been a challenge. So let me introduce the blanket. You can just about see her. You can't see her in her entirety because the camera can't take her all in, but she's called Granny Does Christmas Blanket. And I think that's self-explanatory. It was the first name that came to my mind because of why I designed the blanket. And you may recognize one or two little elements in it from previous blankets. If you've followed me for a while, you may remember last year's one was the sugar plum blanket. And of course, I had my little helper. My granddaughter came to help me make the video for that one. It's still on my YouTube channel, and Leila was an absolute pro when it came to being my sidekick on the video. She's not here today because she's a year older and a little bit less willing, I think, to support her old granny when it comes to making videos. She has her own YouTube channel now and likes to make her own little videos. So I'll leave all that to her. So I'm here by myself. And last year's blanket was a little bit of a departure from normal Christmas colours because I brought in the purples and the plum colours to indicate the sugar plum design. And the previous years was even more of a departure from the norm as far as Christmas colours are concerned, because that was the really, really bright Christmas baubles blanket. And it was really eye-catching dual colours. So with that in mind, I thought that for this year, I would go back to a palette of basically red, green and white, which is obviously the traditional Christmas colours. But personally, I'm not a huge fan of some of the blankets that I see on Pinterest or on Google or whatever of Christmas designs. And a lot of them use that real bottle green, pillar box red and pure white, which I don't think, well, it doesn't appeal to me overly. I know some people will think that's the tradition and that's what they would want to stick with. But for this one, I thought that I would have the red, green and white, but soften it by lightening each of the shades. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute with my yarn pegs, because I can explain to you how the colour ideas evolved for this blanket. But I think the overall look is quite fresh and clean, and the green and the red, I don't think you can see it so well in the distance. I'll bring it up close to you in a minute. But the green and the red of the holly border and the holly motifs and the deep green edgings make it, for me, make it Christmassy. But at the same time, these softer colours mean that I think it will fit very beautifully in with everybody's home decor. So the design, you might remember the blanket that I produced last year around about this time. It wasn't a Christmas blanket. It was a blanket for my nephew's engagement, and I had to do it as a rush job. I didn't have a lot of time. He was having a party for his engagement, and I had to get the blanket made for that. So the upshot of that was that although it was a very popular blanket when people saw it on all my social medias, I wasn't able to produce an actual pattern for it because I didn't have the time. And it's always been in my mind because it was a very simple design, but I was really happy with the result of it. And I thought, for somebody maybe tackling a Christmas blanket for the first time, somebody who was a beginner to crochet, or even if you're not a beginner to crochet but don't want to have a project that takes up a lot of your brain power to make, then I thought if I did a blanket that was based on John's engagement blanket and the simplicity of it, this will be something that anybody can tackle and probably get through reasonably quickly without losing sleep over it. So this was why I went for this particular, when I say template, I mean the square in the middle, the plain squares around the edge of that middle bit, the broad border, and then the two sections of squares in different sizes. So this is how John's blanket was laid out. Also, there's another element about the blanket which I've used before, and that's this motif here, which is the holly motif. And you might remember this one from the sugar plum blanket last year. So that motif that was in the sugar plum blanket is now in the new Granny Does Christmas blanket. So I'm going to bring the blanket to the table, and I'm also going to lay out my yarn pegs and have a quick chat about the colour. And then I'll leave it to you. And if you want to make it, I'll be so pleased. Meantime, let's see a close-up. First to the table, I've brought over this tray of yarn pegs. These are some of the Yarnsmiths Create colours, and I use these pegs all the time when I'm selecting colours for a new project. They are so useful and such good fun to play around with. This, of course, is just a few of the Yarnsmith colours. I do have another tray of them, as well as I think 3 or 4 more trays of pegs for different brands. But I will start off by pulling out 2 or 3 colours, and we'll see how we get on from there. Right, so I'll push that tray out of the way, give myself some space, and I'm going to start with 3 colours. These are the most basic Christmas colours, the white, green and red. And I hope you agree with me that they are a bit on the harsh side. Now, if I take out that Christmas green, I can replace it with a deeper one, and this is the bottle green. Again, I still think it's a little on the harsh side. So we need to start thinking about other colours coming in. First of all, I'm going to take out that really bright red, and that will be replaced. The bottle green I might hang on to, so I'm putting it to one side rather than back into the tray. And this leaves me with number 1 colour, the white. So we'll start to build our colour palette from there. I have a little bit of a problem sometimes with greens in my yarn colours. Yarnsmiths Create does have a nice range, but they don't cover everything. They can't, obviously, and the same goes for the Stylecraft Special. There's 122, I think it is, Stylecraft colours and 120 Yarnsmiths colours, but when you want a colour that's just what's in your mind, very often it's not there. And in this case, I didn't want the olivey green shades for my Christmas blanket. So I picked out the two softer greens. That's the dark sage and the light sage. But I wanted to get darker again. And really, when you start to get darker with these shades, if you're not going for the olive greens, then that's when the bottle green and the Christmas green and the very strong shades come out. The bottle green is actually quite good. When you put it next to the other three, that fits quite well. And so that's why I've just kept that to one side, because I did source another green from a different manufacturer and used it in the blanket. But if you can't get hold of it, you can use the bottle green. So we'll just put that to one side just now. So I've picked my two darker greens, and I chose the crimson for the red rather than the very bright. So that's the crimson. But I felt that with the white, I needed to add some other things in. Now I'm going to push this box over here and start to lay my yarns down. So I've got my white, and I thought that it maybe needs another neutral colour. So bear with me. I'm just going to pick up the shade. So just to tone down the white a little, I've introduced the pale silver, and this is all of a sudden beginning to give me some nice soft paler vibes going on. Before we go on to the pale, I thought, now I can't really give you a real reason, but I wanted to introduce a bit of a bluish tinge. That's because the darker green that I decided to go for is this one. I don't have a yarn peg for it, but this is the Signet DK in the shade Juniper. So this has got a nice green heading onto, it's not blue, but you can see that maybe if you can look closely, you can see that there are a couple of shades of green going on in there. One is quite a blue green and the other is a green green. So this is my darkest green, and that was indicating to me that I could bring in a little bit of blue. So with that in mind, in comes Fjord Blue. So what I'll do is I'll just lift that crimson out of the way just now and put this nearer to the green. And you can see that that is quite a nice blend. And I brought in a lighter version of the Fjord Blue as well. I felt that maybe a paler green should come in, so in comes the hint of mint. So we're definitely on the bluish side of green going on here. I wanted to go paler with my blue. So in comes Duck Egg, and just to blend a little bit better with the green, I've got Robin Egg as well, because you can see the Robin Egg is very much of a sort of greenish turquoise. So let's do it this way. Let's put this in. I'll move like that. So this is how it's coming. But at this point, I feel that the crimson is the only warm or reddish tone. So I wanted to bring in something that was going to add into this range. And in comes Rose Pink. And the rose pink is a nice, again, it's not a strong pink. It's not, for example, a pink that's going to dominate. It's not a sugary pink either. So I was happy with the rose pink. It's on the same range of tones as the other colours. But I wanted to get lighter, and here was a problem. The lighter shades of pink in the Yarnsmiths range, the Create range, they're pretty, they're lovely, but they were too, what would you say, baby pink, pastel-y pink. There is a very, very pale one, but I wanted something that was a little bit more unusual. So I went to the new range of Stylecraft colours and found Wild Orchid. And it's hardly a pink, but it is still a pink. And actually you do see it in the blanket as being a pink. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 colours. Have I got them all? I'll have to check. But this is my palette for my Christmas blanket. And of course, the colours are all even in quantity on these yarn pegs, and in the blanket there's probably more green than all the others. The two pinks and the pale blues have just really got accents in them. They're not huge quantities, so you are seeing mostly green with the white and the red, and of course this dark green. These are the 13 colours then. I think I've covered everything to do with the colour. Yarn pegs are really great fun to use and very useful. Thoroughly recommended. Just before I put all these yarn pegs away, here are the 3 options for colour that appear in the pattern. The top row is the main option, and it's the main option because these are the colours I used when I was making my blanket, and therefore they are described in each of the sections of the blanket. This is the Yarnsmiths Create option with the addition of the pale pink in Stylecraft and the Signet in the dark juniper, but mainly Yarnsmiths Create. The middle row here is alternative option 1, and these are the Stylecraft special colours. Of course, the gap there is for the Wild Orchid. I have put these colours in because I do believe that Stylecraft Special is still available in the US for my American customers. I don't know exactly the retailers, but I do know that Amazon sell it, and I think Lovecrafts in the US also sell it. Also, if you would rather buy your yarn from your local yarn store in the UK, then it's more likely that it'll be Stylecraft that they will stock. And then there's a third option, or alternative option 2, if you like, and that's the bottom row, which you can't quite see at the moment, but it will come back up. These are the Skippies Colour Crafter colours, and I've included them for those of you who are in Europe and don't want to order from the UK, because these colours are widely available. Being a Dutch brand, they're widely available in Europe. They don't match just as well, but they are a pretty good match. 1 or 2 colours are slightly brighter. So these are the options, and I thought just seeing them all laid out would give you some kind of confidence that even if you're not using the main option, your blanket will turn out pretty much the same as mine. And finally, just to say, if you're buying the yarn pack from Wool Warehouse, it will contain the main option, the top option of Yarnsmiths Create. Okay, now it's time to put all these lovely little yarn pegs tidily away and bring in the star of the show. So finally, here is a closer look at the Granny Does Christmas blanket. This is my centre of 9 squares that I start with. This is section 1, because the pattern I always split my pattern into sections. So this is section 1, the 9 centre squares. The very centre one is the holly, and we've got some just simple granny squares either side of the holly, and then in the corners we've got one which I called, I couldn't think of a name for this square, so this is the red green edging square, which is just a white centre with a little border of red and green, and then the duck egg. And so these are the first 9, and they're joined with continuous join as you go. And then we come out to a border of squares which are again just the same size and basically the same idea of the 3 different motifs. There's the holly again, and the red green edging one. This time it's got a duck egg centre, and then a variety of the granny squares, and the colours have just deepened a little bit from the ones in the absolute centre. So, and it's a darker border. This is that nice feared blue which is bordering these ones. And that is section 1 part 2. And then for section 2 I've got this section of plain granny squares, and they are just using a variety of colours which are listed in the pattern. And these ones are joined with simple join as you go, which means that they are made up individually. So say for example I make the pink one, I then join it to the blanket, and then make the pale blue one, join it to the blanket, and so on. The others you can make in advance and join, but these ones have to be made at the time and attached to the blanket. Just something a little bit different. And then we've got this nice broad border. And this border is basically granny stripes. And I wanted it to be nice and pale so that I had the good contrast for these little holly motifs. And these are simply again clusters, treble clusters, but for 2 rounds you're working with 2 colours. That's all explained, but the first round is 1 white, 2 green, 1 white, 2 green, and the next round is 2 white, 1 red, 2 white, 1 red, and that gives you this nice little holly border. And then on to the next border, which is a throwback to the centre in that we're using this holly motif again, but this time the squares in between the there's the holly motif and this red green edging, but the squares in between are plain coloured granny squares. And then finally, or almost finally, we've got a big border of granny squares. These are a lot bigger. These ones were just 1, 2, 3, 4 round granny squares, and these ones are 6 round, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the joining round. And these granny squares are mixed colours. You can see there's different colours amongst the plain granny squares, and then between each one is a granny square which has got another holly motif in the middle and then the pale silver. And finally we have the edging and the final borders and the edging, and this is section 6, so there are 6 sections altogether. This is just a combination of different treble clusters, DC stitch, treble stitch, and then finally this really pretty little, can you see it? Little kind of bauble border, but it's really small baubles, and that just edges it, just to kind of give you a hint to the holly berries again. My Granny Does Christmas is going to grace my sofa this year. I've got so many Christmas blankets, and I have to make the executive decision which one's going to share the limelight that year. But this one is going to be on my sofa in the kitchen this Christmas, and maybe my sugar plum will make it into the living room. But that's it. We're all set to go, and as I said before, I hope you enjoy it if you make the pattern. And I'll see you again, and thank you for watching. Bye.